Alright, hell yeah. So this video is going to be about R1 raft design, and I just want to show the bottom of my boat, and we're going to look how it's fairly level, you know what I mean? So right in the middle, dead center, the floor isn't protruded per se. It definitely is super close, and just a foot away, we're going to start developing some gaps. So even right there, we might have just a touch of gaps. Where I'm pointing my finger is where the floor actually contacts, and then if I show like a gap marker with my fingers, that's where there is slight gap. And so this is the back of my raft, and it's kind of interesting because we're going to flip it around, get a camera from the other side, and the front of the raft has less rockers. So the back of the raft right here, the floor will start to protrude, and I can actually rock the ruler back and forth. So when you see me rocking the ruler back and forth, that means that we have, yeah, so even right there. So I'm showing that there's a gap. So yeah, so we're not even 1 foot from the center of the boat, and we do have, you know, a substantial angle. Well, I mean, just some sort of angle. But that is important. Well, I don't know. So now it gets into what do you do with this knowledge? Because with this boat, it's been one of the only ones probably on the market that has a full rocker underneath the floor, where the floor is protruded and you have a lowered tubes, outer tubes. And so what this has allowed me to do is when sitting onto edge, I can really edge my boat. It really reduces surface tension. All the you know, if I'm trying to go fast, I'll lean it onto edge, and then it effectively makes it like a one pontoon. You know, the equivalent of, you know, just reducing that surface area underneath the boat. And that's important. So anyway, so, and that also has drawbacks, because this boat is flippier, but then so is a kayak. So if, like, the whole idea, I think, with R1 rafting is to mimic kayaking. Just like a C1 kayaker, you know, they don't want a bigger, boxier boat that's harder to manage just because they've chosen to use a single-bladed paddle. C1 kayaker is going to take the same kayak that a normal kayaker would, whether it's going to be for river running, for play boating, and they're going to kneel in it and use a single-bladed paddle. So the same can be said between an R1 raft and, yeah, you know, the analogy is there, but an R1, I think what makes something R1 from the traditional sense, even though it could just be, hey, you're a rafter, you got a single-bladed paddle. So, like one of the cooler boats that's an IK is the Air Spud. Now I've seen that shredded up, surf it up. It's got some really good dimensions, and for its weight, it's a really good boat. I think it's got, you know, pretty much the things that you want, full rocker. But you're sitting in the center of it. A traditional R1 boat, you know, for this commentary would be something that you have the choice to sit on an outer tube, where you can't do that in an IK. You can't sit in an IK on the outer tube and expect it not to just tip over. With that, though, I'm very interested in what's the smallest boat you can have R1ing, because you have between R1 rafts and pack rafts, there's a huge size difference. And sure, one you sit in the center, we've kind of talked about that, but I'm fascinated of like how small a raft you can go to actually crush bigger stuff. You know what I mean? If you look at the world of kayaking, and like I said, pack rafting, if you want to do harder rivers, you don't necessarily want to just go with a bigger, you know, bulkier pack raft or something like that. You want more performance. And so, so this video is kind of like showing those perform. And sorry I didn't talk about the rocker. There's definitely a lot more rocker at the front. So that's the thing. With this IB floor, it actually is fairly flat, and as it goes towards the front and the back, you get more rocker at the very front and the very back. But also you get a pretty decent, because it's fairly straight, and then it's faster, I would imagine, and and having a boat that does have an I-beam floor, with the I-beams, I think that does help keep your tracking going in one direction. Because if you get too small, I mean, there's a point where, like, I took out just in one of the RMR inner tubes and saw if I could just R1 it, and you can't R1 a donut. If something's totally round, it's almost impossible to paddle straight. So hell yeah. So anyway, so this is kind of the first video of R1 Raft design. I have another video after this, just kind of a compilation of clips, saying what's the benefits of some of the designs over others. And but I just think in the rafting world, for the people that are making rafts, and I'm bringing this up because I just didn't think anyone really cared about R1, but now they're starting to. So the two companies, one that really probably care about R1 rafting, I would say the first one that started would be RMR. They started making specific 9 to 10 foot boats, knowing that those would be used for R1 and R2s. They're out in the east. There's a lot of people that want to R2 some pretty cool rivers out there. Now, Sotar sponsored an R1 rafter specifically for their 10 foot and 11 foot line of urethane rafts. So the urethane, this boat is urethane, and that's the best material that you can use because it's not sticky. So it's going to boof over rocks, and stuff like that. So it has performance oriented, and it's hella light. So the Sotar Merlin series, if I'm getting that right, I think Merlin is the series. I forget what the other name for those boats are. But yeah, it's 56 pounds. So you get the lightest R1 boat out there. 10 foot. Now this is 10 foot. And then just comparing it to the RMR Thundercloud. RMR Thundercloud is very similar to this boat, but the floor, I do not think it is as protruded. I got to see it with my own eyes. And I was even in West Virginia, went to the factory. I don't know if it was the one of the owners or whatever, but I talked to this gal, and she's like, well, I just mentioned that. I was just like, yeah, as an R1er, like, this is an aspect that you want to design in your boat. And some things it's difficult, you know what I mean? With a raft, with a kayak, you just have a mold, you can go off a mold, like nothing's going to be different, it's all going to be the same with molded boats. But when you're designing a raft from a computer program, I'm sure it's harder to dial this stuff in. And even in this boat, you get some differences. So if you're paying attention to, kind of the angles and stuff. Yeah. So anyway, so I guess we only have a couple more minutes we're almost done with this, so I should have been maybe more talking about this. But just the fact that I'm able to angle this onto edge has its benefits. And, yeah, that's it. I mean, just in the R1 raft world, if you're looking at the bottom of the boat, this is an important aspect. Now, I haven't gotten to try other boats that are different. I think the opposite of this is a floor that's totally raised, and that's going to be like the NRS High 5 currently. This is actually called the NRS High 5. This is the Revolution series. And so for the second part of this video, in another minute, we're going to just kind of look. We're going to do a walk around and a video walk around of this entire boat. But the current NRS High 5 is kind of a raised floor and then railed on both sides. Now, I haven't gotten to paddle that, but what I notice with this boat is, and in my R1 design video that's I'll be out tomorrow, I guess, where you actually get to see clips, is that it very functions like a what are those boats called? Mackenzie boats, the dories, like the dories of the Grand Canyon, where you have a floor where you have a narrow footprint underneath. So if you have a raised floor, you got kind of a narrow footprint, and then your tubes are to the side. Well, they don't get as sucked down in features. So if you're in a tight, sticky hole sideways, one side isn't just going to get thrown underneath the water into a flip. So that's something where that's kind of the Achilles heel of a cataract. If they're sideways in steep holes, man, they can just flip over like a top. Where this, all your contact is going to be, your contact can be in the center and the edge that you're edging into. So you can edge into big waves and holes. And so that is one performance-oriented aspect of this boat that I really enjoy. And so when I'm going down the river, I can actually surf, it gets stalled out and I can edge into different sort of waves and stuff. But it's subtle, you know what I mean? Like that floor isn't like 1 inch protruded. But there's about at least a ½ inch gap in some areas from the outer tubes to where the floor is protruded on this boat. And then the question is, just like I've only paddled this one, but I've taken it to the lake and I just thoroughly enjoy it. You know what I mean? And I wish that there was something, if I could scale this down, it doesn't need to be as wide. When I sit in it, I don't need to have it as wide as it is. It's only 5'3" wide. That's its beam. But with the R1 strokes, what I found surfing is that, especially at a wave, is like kayakers will be leaning on one side and then reaching over to their stern and doing a stern pry. That's how you're like turning your boat on a surf wave. And so that's very difficult. I have to sit basically in the center and then reach over. But the more I reach over, the better, that performance is. So having a boat, basically just this scaled down. And so one aspect of this boat that it surfs real well is it has constant rocker tip to tail. So it has, for sure, progressive rocker. It doesn't have any hard edges. And so that your contact point is wherever, the weight is in the boat. So that also gives me the opportunity to lean back and then have the front kind of cantilever over a small little, like if I'm entering a surf wave, I lean back, have the front cantilever over some of the features that are going to stop you from entering a wave. And then once I get closer to that wave, then I can drive forward and then teeter-totter up over those features. Anyway, so, but this video is just a call out of like, people that are designing boats for R1, definitely wait, So Sotar, with urethane, hell yeah, that is the step in the right direction. 56 pounds. And then, I don't know, but it's got to be hell to like make boats for the R1 community. If that's all you're making them for, because there's a dozen of us that really want to do this, and there's just probably no money in it. And even this might be a bad R2 boat because it has that rocker where the floor is protruded, let's say. If two people are on both sides, if one shifts their weight, that's going to dramatically shift the weight. So with this boat, I've always said it's just like, yeah, when I R2, I'm flipping more than when I R1. Because when I'm R1ing, I'm paying attention to where that center is. And so I'm always weight shifting myself. But when you have two people, it's, and one person that is just doesn't, isn't just is along for the ride, it's difficult for them to intuit that. But yeah, from the underground, like this shot, it doesn't show like the floor is protruded an inch and those tubes are just kind of hanging out in space. So it doesn't have to be much, but definitely this can lean on a high angle. And so in tomorrow's video, we kind of show pictures of like, yeah, that's where we start. We basically say, yeah, at the lake, I can just lean this over onto a high edge and then kind of turn it into one tube. It feels fast. And from that aspect, it's fun to paddle on a lake. So there is that aspect of it'd be the same as a kayak, you know what I mean? If you have a play boat, you can kind of just play around on flat water, build skill, and learn. Now, and then everything has a trade-off. Like one might be great for surf, and that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in, but in even big wave surf. You know, the going into a big wave is going to be the same. You want to edge, so we show footage of pack rafts that have the same design and even harder, like more chine, more lowered floor, steeper angles, where you can edge. You know, just leaning a pack raft, you can effectively edge into a big hole, you know, or just a big surf wave, like a wave hole scenario. Where this, I can, you know what I mean? I'm sure if you made the rocker more underfoot, it would just be more tippy. For sure, it'd be more tippy, but maybe you would get some benefits from that. But I just think this is a place that you'd want to start. You know what I mean? For people that are designing rafts, if you're not paying attention to where your floor actually, you know, sets with the rest of your boat, I mean that's you know, like because that was funny. Going to RMR, it's just like, yeah, they had the idea of the design. They wanted a full rocker design. They wanted diminishing tubes, and they chose this shape. This blunt shape is good because you can stick it in when you're surfing. Your nose goes in, and it's not going to instantly turn. If this was more blunt, hell yeah, I think it would be better. You know, if this was a 9-foot boat and it had half a foot cut off on the front and back, I think that would also be good. You know what I mean? Because the front end, you know, turn it into, you know, very similar. It would be better if it was similar to a play boat on a kayak. Yeah, so that is the one thing that I've seen with a couple of the this I would call a diamond shape R1 boat, and you know what I mean. So this one, the RMR Thundercloud, and definitely the new Sotar. Fairly pointy front ends where you can drop into something and your front end can instantly turn. You know, where that's an aspect to play around with. You know what I mean? Sometimes pointier is better because it points into things, unless that front end gets specifically hit sideways very dramatically. Then maybe shorter, like maybe plugging into something, even though it might stop your momentum. So that is kind of interesting from that perspective. But hell yeah, that's about all I got. I just wanted to show the dynamics of this. And hell yeah, you know what I mean? An NRS, so that's a good full rocker. So you can for sure see, like, that's a small footprint, so that's a whole lot of rocker. And I'm able to lean, you know, center, lean back, and then kind of shift that. And then just like a ski, as I lean that onto edge, my effective edge gets longer. And so that's also happening with the pack rafts, and that's just, you know, kayaks have that in general. So anyway, this kind of rounds out this video of R1 design. And I just wanted to show you the floor because the floor was the only thing that's drastically different than other boats. You know, I'll have the opportunity to maybe rent a mini-me, and those are the opposite. It's a little bit railed. You know, they have nothing's changed on the mini-me for a dozen years. So that's why I'm kind of making this video. So maybe people that are interested can be like, oh yeah, I see it. All right, hell yeah.